Hello all attendees, this is Siddhant from Edureka and I welcome you all to today's learning journey on an automated testing tool called Selenium. Now if you are an IT aspirant, this video is for you. If you're looking to switch from manual to automation testing, well this video is definitely for you. In fact, learning Selenium can very well be your entry point to the software industry. So by the end of today's session, I'm going to make sure that you guys are equipped to run your first Selenium test case. But before we begin, let me quickly course you all through today's training session. So first, I'll be talking about why you should be using Selenium. Then I'll tell you what Selenium is. Then I'll introduce you to the versions it has had and the suite of tools that it offers. Then I'll show you how to set Selenium up. And finally, we'll be going hands-on in Selenium and running our first test case. So without any further ado, let's get started. So the first thing that I'd like you people to understand is why go with Selenium as your tool for testing. Now starting with the most obvious reason, Selenium is an automated testing tool. Now when I say automated testing tool, I'm fundamentally referring to the software tools that can enable automation or automate the process of testing an application, unlike the manual testing tools where every possibility of input, output, and interaction with the application has to be recorded, reported, and compared manually. So just like it sounds, manual testing can be a really tedious task. It'll need you to expend a lot of energy and time, especially in today's world where every application or website has innumerable lines of code and mundane amounts of data behind them. But with automated tools, all that hassle can just become automatic. Now, how many of you remember the rudimentary handheld fans that we used back in the day? So it was basically this flat surface that had to be waved back and forth continuously for us to feel cooler on hotter days. Well, we've come a long way since then, haven't we? All it takes now is the flick of a switch or just pressing a button for our air conditioners to kick in and make it cold for us. Anyways, I was just trying to tell you how we have been moving from manual to automatic ever since. So QTP, RFT, and Test Complete are also automated testing tools and are the very best based on industry standards. So QTP stands for Quick Test Professional and RFT stands for Rational Functional Tester. So I've gone ahead and I've put them all into a table so that it's easy for us to compare. Now the first feature we're looking at is license. QTP requires you to be licensed by HP, similarly RFT by IBM and Test Complete by Smart Bear Software. But Selenium is an open source tool and does not require a license to be used. Now these licensed products can be pretty expensive for just a single person to buy, but open source products can be used by just about anybody for free. Now talking of customer support, the licensed products will never let you down. Selenium, however, does not really have a rigid support for customers, but depends entirely on an open source community with lots of insanely active developers on it. Now coming to the programming skills, QTP and RFT does not require you to be much of a coder. Test Complete will need some coding skills though, and in case of Selenium, you'll get to explore and flaunt all your coding skills. Moving on, QTP and RFT work only on Windows, and Test Complete limits itself to only Windows 7 or higher versions of Windows, but Selenium on the other hand works good on almost any operating system. Now the final feature we're looking at is language support, wherein QTP supports only VBScript, RFT supports Java and C#, Test Complete supports VBScript, JScript, Delphi script, C++ and C#, whereas Selenium gives you a dynamic range of support for almost all popular programming languages like Java, C#, Ruby, Python, Perl, and PHP. Now all that being said, I take it that you folks now have a better understanding so as to why Selenium is a technology that has been trending among its peers. So apart from beating the challenges of manual testing, here's why Selenium is your best choice. Being open source, it is available for free. It does not really matter what operating system you've been using. Also, Selenium will let you perform tests on almost any web browser and let you pick whichever programming language you're comfortable in writing your test cases in. So before we move on to define what Selenium is, you should know that there are several tools to test every other type of applications, but dynamic web applications are best tested with Selenium, and those are the only kinds of application that Selenium is designed to test. Now that brings us to our next topic. Let us finally establish a concrete definition to what Selenium is. So Selenium is just an open source tool that can automate almost any web browser. And that is all there is to it. So let us go ahead and exemplify this definition. Now here's a manual tester who's really troubled with testing the overwhelming web applications that make up most of our cyberspace today. So he's really stressed over the alarming number of test cases he has to work upon every day. So all that stress at work makes him feel like his head is always at the brink of an explosion. But don't worry, I went ahead and I told him what Selenium could do. So let us see what he has to say now. Wow, seems like he's pretty relaxed now, huh? Well, what can I say? I guess Selenium can do that to you. Anyways, let's take note of a few important points before we move on to our next topic. So as I've already mentioned, Selenium can only be used to test web applications. It is fast and easy to use even with large sets of data and has a guaranteed accuracy. So with too much data to handle, humans can be prone to mistakes. But lucky for us, Selenium is not human. And now that we know what Selenium is, let us also quickly go over how web applications are tested in it. Being able to automate any web browser, Selenium directly runs scripts in that browser to simultaneously automate the web application and test it. So we'll be running our first test case towards the end of today's session so that you people can relate to everything that we are learning right now. Let me now introduce you to the suite of tools that Selenium comprises and the versions that have evolved over the years. Now, the latest release of Selenium is version 3.12.0, and these are the components that Selenium has offered over the years: the Selenium IDE, the Selenium Grid, Selenium RC, and the Selenium WebDriver. So let us look into each of these and understand why they're a part of Selenium. So initially, Selenium RC was used to write test cases in different programming languages and run recorded scripts in any browser. But RC had a few drawbacks that led to its deprecation. Like say, RC had a complex architecture which required everything to be passed through a RC server, making it really slow. Now moving further, we also have the IDE, which was previously known as the Selenium Recorder. It provides an environment to execute test cases, record them, and export the programming code in different languages. And then we also have the Selenium Grid that enables parallel and distributed testing by executing test cases across remote machines irrespective of whatever operating system they might use. Now that leaves us with the WebDriver. Let me simultaneously talk about the evolution of Selenium as we understand what WebDriver is. So the first version of Selenium came with the Selenium IDE, the Selenium Grid, and the Selenium RC. A little later, a separate project called WebDriver was also getting popular as a superior tool for browser automation. And by the time Selenium launched its second version, it had merged Selenium RC with the WebDriver and decided to call it Selenium WebDriver instead. Now this was because WebDriver overcame all the shortcomings that Selenium RC had been posing for a while. In fact, WebDriver enabled the scope for providing better functionalities with Selenium. Like with the advent of WebDriver, Selenium had no need for the RC server to be the middleman anymore. It could now directly interact with the browser to run tests, making it faster than ever. It also removed all the redundancies and confusing commands of Selenium RC and made sure that disabled elements on any web page or web app stay inaccessible. So by the third version, Selenium WebDriver witnessed improvements of all sorts and became the flagship tool for Selenium. So it could basically do everything that Selenium RC did, but in a better way and with more features. Alright, so now that we have seen the why and the what of Selenium, we've also made ourselves familiar with its version and components. Let us now move to the how of Selenium, as in how to set it up for use. So there are three important prerequisites to using Selenium. So first, we'll be needing a way to write our test scripts in, which will be provided by our programming language, which in our case will be Java. Then we'll need an environment where those programming codes make sense and can be executed, which will be provided by our IDE, that is Eclipse. And finally, we'll be needing a framework, which is essentially a set of tools which will allow us to access the proper resources to automate and test the web applications. And that is provided by Selenium. So let's get started on installing and setting these up. So the first step will be installing Java. And how can you do that? You can visit the link that's given on the slide and download the latest release of the Java platform. So I'll anyways go ahead and give you a demo of it. Let's open a browser, type in Java into it. Once you've done that, let's look for Java Standard Edition. Here is our standard edition. So let's go to SE, downloads. Here we can see 10 to be the latest release of Java. Go ahead and download the JDK for it. Accept the license agreement and download JDK for your operating system. Once you've downloaded the JDK, you'll get a setup file. Please go ahead and install it on your system. But we still have one more step to do before we can use Java on our system. So once you're done with the installation, the next process would be setting up your environment variables to use JDK with Eclipse. So how can we do that? It's pretty simple. You can go to my PC or this PC and go to the properties. The system window opens. You go to the advanced system settings. So once you've clicked on advanced system settings, there'll be another window that pops up with the name system properties. Find the advanced tab under it and go to environment variables. So once you've done that, the environment variables window now pops up. Find the user variable. So go ahead and click on the new button under the user variables. Once you've done that, there should be a window that says edit user variable. Now under that window, go to the variable name and set it as path. And as for the variable value, you will have to find the JDK folder that has been installed on your system, go into it, and there must be a folder called bin. Copy the location of the folder and paste it as the variable value for path. So basically, we'll need the location of the bin folder in your JDK folder. So once you have done that, go ahead and click on OK and create another new variable in the same fashion and name it Java_home this time, and set the value of the variable as the location of the JDK folder on your system. So once you've done that, click on OK and you're done setting up your environment variables and you can use JDK with Eclipse. So let's go ahead and download Eclipse first. So you can visit the link that's been given here, or I'll anyways be doing it. Let's go to Google and click on the address bar, type in Eclipse. Once we've done that, we'll find the official website. We can see the latest release of Eclipse to be Oxygen. Go ahead and download it from a page like this. And once you've done that, you'll get a setup file. Please go ahead and install that setup file on your system. So that is all you'll need to do for Eclipse. So once Eclipse has been installed, the next step would be downloading Selenium jar files. You can visit the link here and you'll find a window of this kind under which there'll be many versions of Selenium. Go ahead and select the version that you want and download it. I'll anyways be doing it so that you people know which files exactly to download. Let's go to Selenium this time. Once you've done that, go to the official website, click on downloads. You can see the latest release to be here. So you can go ahead and download it. Or if you want to download one of the previous releases, click on previous releases. You'll find so many versions here. Let's say we want to download 3.9. Now there's so many files in the 3.9 folder, but you don't have to download all of them. We'll just be needing Selenium Server 3.9.1.zip and Selenium Server Standalone 3.9.1.jar. So download both these files. You should get a zip folder and a jar file. Let's then get back to the web page, and I'll encourage you to download a few more things that we'll be requiring. The first is a driver for the Internet Explorer. Download it according to your specifications. Then come to third-party drivers, bindings and plugins. Install the 𝐸 driver for Mozilla Firefox and the Chrome driver for Google Chrome. So once you've done that, you should get 3 more zip files. Let me show you how they should look after you've downloaded them. So these are the drivers that we downloaded. Go ahead and extract them. Similarly, this should be the Selenium server zip file. Go ahead and extract it. Once you've extracted the drivers, they should be in folders like this, containing the respective drivers. Similarly, the jar files. The Selenium server standalone is a jar file that we downloaded, and we also extracted a few more jar files like these. And then there are more jar files inside the libs folder. So we'll be needing all of these. Let us go ahead to the slide. So once we have downloaded the jar files, we'll have to configure Eclipse for Selenium. Now, how can we do that? For that, we'll have to open Eclipse first. Let's go ahead and do that. There we go. So first, there'll be an Eclipse launcher that'll ask you to set a workspace. It's basically just a folder where all your projects are going to be saved in. So click on launch once you have done specifying your workspace. Here we are. So let's see what our slide says. So it's telling us to create a new Java project, name it, then configure the build path for Eclipse to recognize Selenium, right? So these are the steps. We'll have to add the jar files that we've downloaded and click on apply and close. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing we'll be doing is creating a new project, that is a new Java project, and name it Selenium project, let's say. Once we have done that, let's go ahead and click on finish. So here is our project under which we have a source folder and the Java files. So let us go ahead and add the Selenium files to it. We go to build path, we configure build path. Under the module path, we can see all the Java files. So let's go to class path and add the external jar files. So find the location of your jar files, then select them all, open. So I have more jar files that I have to add jar files. So there were 2 in this folder, open, and there must be another one that is a standalone one. So let's go ahead and add that too. And finally, when you're done, go ahead and click on apply and close. So once you've done that, there would be another folder called reference libraries. So now you've configured Eclipse to use Selenium in it. So let's go to our next slide now. All right, so that brings us to our last section, which is hands-on in Selenium. So now that the prerequisites have all been installed and Selenium has been configured for Eclipse IDE, how about we automate and test Gmail using Google Chrome? Well, okay. So this is the test script for it. Let me anyways go and write it down so that we can run out first test script. What will we do? We'll go ahead and first create a package just like Java goes. So co.edureka dot, let's say selenium dot demo, right? So let's click on finish. Go ahead and create a class. Let's say I'll name my class demo as well, and I'll make sure there's a main method in it and click on finish. So here we have our class. Let's go ahead and write the test case. So while I write the code, I'll also be walking you through it. So don't you worry if you don't understand something, we'll all be covering that. So now we have our Java files here and our jar files for Selenium here. But what about the drivers that we added? So these drivers are really important things. They are the ones that can instantiate your browser, which means drivers are necessary if you want to automate your web browsers. So we'll have to type in a command so that our drivers are connected to our program. So the command for it is set property, under which we'll have to tell the command about what driver we are talking about first. So we're talking about the web driver that is of Google Chrome. Okay. So once I've done that, let me also go ahead and tell the command where to find it. So I'll have to go and find my Google Chrome driver, which is Chrome driver, copy the location for it. So this is the location of the folder that it is in, but we need the location of the file. So we'll be adding that. So now that we've done that, let us add the name of the file as well, which is Chrome driver. And what is the type of file it is? It is an exe file. So that's it. We've gone ahead and we have successfully connected the driver to our programs. So let us go ahead and create a reference variable for the interface web driver. So I'll name my reference variable driver and assign it an object of the class Chrome driver. Now these interfaces and classes have been provided to us by the Selenium jar files that we added. We just have to import it to our program. So I use a constructor to initialize the reference variable with an object. So now you can see an error here. That's because we have not imported our interface and our classes. So if you hover your mouse over it, you can see an option to import the interface first, and then let's go and import the class as well. We've imported the class as well now. So now let's use our driver to call some methods that will, let's say, open a website for me first. So what website do we want to open? We want to open Gmail. So I'll have to type in that .gmail.com, right? So that is our web page. Now, once it has opened the web page for me, I'll ask it to maximize the window that I'm viewing my browser in. We can do that by the commands driver.manage.window.maximize. Okay. So let's use our driver and find a web element. Now, what is a web element? Well, any component, anything on a web page is a web element. Okay. So in this case, let's say this is the placeholder where I will want my email ID to be. So this is my web element. So let me inspect it. So once I've done that, I can see this web element to have a few attributes here. So that is how we're going to find that web element and send some text to it, which is in my case, my email ID. So find element. Once you've done that, we'll also have to tell it how to find the element. So we'll be using the ID name to find the element, which is identifier ID. So let's say by ID, we'll have to tell it the name of the ID as well. And we just saw the name of the ID to be identifier and ID, right? Okay, so once we've done that, we'll also have to tell it what to do once it finds the web element for us. It'll send some text to it, which can be done by the command send keys. So what keys do we want to send it? I want to send an email ID, let's say, right? I've sent an email ID to it. Now, once I've entered my email ID, I will like to click on the next button. Let's go and inspect it. All right, so I can see the class name to be 𝐂𝐝𝐴𝐾9. So let me go ahead and find the element by the class name. And the command would be by dot class name. And we'll have to give it the class name as well, which in our case was C 𝐤𝐴K9, right? Let's put that into. Now we've done that. So what does it do once it finds it? It'll click on the button, right? So let's tell it to click. We've done that. So all of this should happen automatically. That's the entire purpose of writing the script. So now that I've gone ahead and I have automated some of my browser features, how about I also build a small test case? So let's say I declare a variable of the string type and I name it AT for my reference to actual title, and I ask my driver to get me the title of the web page that it automatically opened. So get title. So what should our title be actually? I mean, since we are opening Gmail, the title should be Gmail, right? So let me go ahead and create another string variable, name it ET for expected title, and we're expecting it to be Gmail, right? So let me also go ahead and close the browser that I've opened with the driver.close command. Now, after that, let me go ahead and use the string variables to establish a test condition. So that can be done best with the if statement. So let's say at dot equals, I want to ignore cases. I just want the names to be same. So I'll tell it to ignore cases. And so if this happens, if they match, we'll know that our test is successful. So we'll print the same test successful. And if that does not happen, we'd know that something went wrong and our test was unsuccessful. So let's print out the same, print ln, and what do we write? We wanted to display test failure, right? So we've successfully built a test case. So let me go ahead and execute it. So my browser opened automatically. It also navigated to Gmail, entered my ID, and closed the window. But it happened really fast, so you people must not have seen everything. But it says test successful, which means our titles also match. But I would still like to slow the automation down so that you people can actually see everything that happened. So that is also possible. We can do it by thread.sleep. Let's say I'll ask it to sleep for 2000 milliseconds. Similarly, I'll have one more sleep command after we have clicked on the next button. So this is not necessary. I mean, normally testing would require you to do it really fast so that in a matter of second, maybe 1,000 cases can be done or more. But I'm doing this so that you people can see everything that happened. Okay, thread requires us to throw an exception. So we did that. Let me now go ahead and run it. Okay, so my browser is open and I have Gmail and my ID typed in with the screen got maximized. I'm in the window and that's it. We also closed the browser and it says test was successful. So congratulations, we just ran our first Selenium test case. Let us go back to the slide. So this was the code that we just ran and our test was a success. So that brings us to the end of our session. Let us finally go over the session in a minute. First, we discussed why you should be using Selenium because it is free, open source, works on any operating system, any web browser, and lets you code in multiple programming languages. Then we saw what Selenium is, we defined it. It is just an open source tool that can automate almost any browser. Then we went over the versions it has and the suite of tools that it offers. And we also saw how to set Selenium up, the 3 prerequisites for it. And we finally ran a test case in Selenium. So that's it for today. Thank you so much and happy learning.